Alright, so the new 417th prediction is for AB 2 2020, which is the 10th 2NC First Fruits, which is actually the proper, the true 2NC Super Pentecost from our installation over the Second New Covenant once we became non-Adamic in Zoar on 2012, Kislev 21, which is the second 2NC Pentecost. And then the third fire sign in the UK is AB 5-6, which is both the Zoar Pentecost and the late second 1NC Pentecost, which is actually the 1NC Super Pentecost from our installation over the 1NCs on Elul 5 2013, our non-Adamic Zoar installation. And the reason we had it wrong before, and we think we have it right this time, is that when we were calculating these Super Pentecosts, we failed to take into consideration properly that monthly Sabbaths have an effect and Jubilees have an effect. So, during a monthly Sabbath, you cannot have a first fruits because it's defined as the day after the Sabbath. And during a monthly Sabbath, there is no day after a Sabbath, they're all Sabbaths. Similarly, a Pentecost is the day after the seventh Sabbath. And that seventh Sabbath is extended if it's in a monthly Sabbath to continue to the end of the month. You're still on the Sabbath. So again, a Pentecost cannot occur during a Sabbath month. It's different in a Jubilee month because the Leviticus 25 definition of a Jubilee does not say you can't do any work on it. So it's not a Sabbath month, but it has many features of a Sabbath month, which is well confusing. But a Jubilee is a release from law. You cannot prune your vineyard during it. Therefore, neither can you make a law operational during it, which is what happens on a Pentecost. So you cannot have a Pentecost in a Jubilee, but you can have a First Fruits, because Jesus got married. First Fruits in 2008 Nisan 22 was the First Fruits. He got married to the First Presence 1NCs then, the 12 Apostles, etc., of his first century ministry. He married them at the beginning of the Kingdom of God on that First Fruits Day. So you can have an appointment on a First Fruits Day in a Jubilee, because 2008 Nisan was a Jubilee. It's the 1440th Jubilee from the sin of Adam. Jubilees counting from the first whole month after that sin, which is 3993 ER. And the 1440th month after that, counting from ER as month one, is Nisan 2008. So you can have a First Fruits on a Jubilee, but you cannot have a Pentecost. And then the question is, what do you do? You mentioned that you're supposed to be having a First Fruits in a Jubilee and you can't have it. What do you do? Well, in the case of a 2NC First Fruits, you'd have to bump it forward to be the first of the next month, which is a Sabbath, so it doesn't work, so you have to go to the second of the next month, but that's the next First Fruits. So in the case of the 2NC, you just lose it, it's just invalidated, it just doesn't happen. You just miss that entire Pentecost count if there's a Sabbath where there's a First Fruits. In the case of the 1NC Pentecost, which count in weekly Sabbaths, not festival Sabbaths, or virtual Sabbaths like the 2NCs do. The 2NC Pentecost counts from the second of the month to the 21st, unless the second of the month is a weekly Sabbath, in which case it counts from the third of the month to the 22nd always. 1NCs, it depends where the Sabbath is, in cakes. So if you find that there's a monthly Sabbath and your First Fruits falls in the middle of that, it's different with the first New Covenant Pentecost. What you would do is you would continue looking for a weekly Sabbath that didn't have a Sabbath after it, and you find it either on the 30th of the Sabbath month or up to the 6th of the Sabbath month, which means that the First Fruits Day would be the 1st to the 7th of the month following the Sabbath month. Then you count your 50 count from there. Because the 1NC First Fruits has to be the day after the weekly Sabbath. 2NC First Fruits does not. And so I could go on all night about this. I've done it ad nauseam in Understanding 271-11. What it effectively does is knock out one of the Pentecosts in each of the 7 years of the Super Pentecost, which bumps the whole thing forward a month in each of the years and in the last year. So what that means is that we bumped the fast signs forward. However, the Super Pentecost, the definition that is so brilliantly and codedly worded, the Leviticus 23 definition of a Pentecost in verses 15 and 16, it says, you should count from the day directly after the Sabbath. From the day of your bringing a sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths, they should prove to be complete. You should count to the 7th Sabbath. 50 days implied you should count to. And you must offer a grain offering, not 2 loaves, which is what a Pentecost is, just a grain offering. It's a masterpiece in inordinate ambiguity, as is the entire Bible. And some standout features are that you must count from the day after the Sabbath. From the day of offering your wave offering. That's 2 froms. And you should count to the 7th, or the day after the 7th Sabbath. And to the 50th day, or count 50 days. So there are 2 froms and 2 tos. One of the 2s is implied, but it's there. And the word count appears twice. So, in other words, it's defining 2 50 counts. And we know that one of them should be taken as weekly Sabbaths for the first New Covenant Pentecost, and the other one should be taken as festival Sabbaths. What I mean by that is, when you have the Passover, it's followed by a festival Sabbath, which is Nisan 15. And then it's followed by a weekly Sabbath, which can be Nisan 15, or any of the Sabbaths in case. That is one interpretation of the double definition of a Pentecost. From A, from B, to C, to D. Where A equals B and C equals D normally. But nonetheless, that's how it's defined. But there's another way of looking at it, which is this. It says you must count from the day after your first fruits, 7 Sabbaths. And one takes them to be weekly Sabbaths, as I said, or just 7 bunches of 7 days, virtual Sabbaths in the 2NC Pentecost. And you take a day to be a BLC day. But you don't have to. You could take a day to be a festival day. And you could take the Sabbath to be not a weekly Sabbath, but a Pentecostal festival Sabbath, because it is, after all, defining a Pentecost. If you do that, you get a Super Pentecost, where instead of having 7 weeks of BLC days, you have 7 weeks of Pentecost festivals. The Pentecostal, late Pentecostal, late Pentecostal, late Pentecost, etc. Spanning 7 years. And it becomes a bit like a kind of Jericho campaign, where you go 7 times of a Pentecost in each of 7 years, and then at the end of that you've done 49 of them. Then you go to the day directly after the 7th Sabbath, which will be the festival day, if you've interpreted day to mean festival, where you offer a grain offering. Now, it doesn't have to be Pentecostal, it can be a first fruits. And the 7th Sabbath of the 7th week in Super Pentecost from 2012, Chislev 21, our appointment over the 20s, that is Tammuz 21, 2020. And if you go to the festival, the grain offering festival after that, it's Ab 2, which is 2NC 10th 2NC first fruits. So that's the second fast sign at the 2NC Super Pentecost. The third fast sign is at the 1NC Super Pentecost on Ab 5. Now, the next ambiguity is there's 2 ways of interpreting complete. The Sabbaths should prove to be complete, the 7 Sabbaths. That could mean they're complete in the sense that they each have 7 days in them, which would be 7 Pentecostal Sabbath days, or 7 Pentecost, the late, the regular, the late, the late, blah, blah, blah. Or it can be complete in the sense that it's a completely celebrated festival, the festival, the late festival, and all possible late festivals that you would get in the absence of any freaky appointments, which is generally just the festival and the late festival for the 2NC, and it's the festival, it's the first one I see Pentecost, the second one I see Pentecost, the late first and the late second. So you get 4 festivals, because if you miss the first Pentecost you're allowed to go to the second, but that doesn't continue to the third. And if you missed the first fruits, you can go to a second first fruits, and then you could go to the second Pentecost. If you missed that, you can go to the late second Pentecost, but that's as far as you can go. So it can be complete in the sense of all of the possible days upon which you can celebrate the festival, or it can be complete in the sense that we'll have 7 of them. And the other thing is that a Sabbath is 7 of 7 identical time periods. So if you have one of these Pentecosts which is interrupted by a Sabbath month, and it isn't in fact 50 days long, but it's 80 days long because it's got a 30-day gap in it, or something like that, then it isn't identical to the other Pentecosts. Therefore, it doesn't count in your week of 7 identical things to make a Sabbath. So when you get this all completely right, when you know precisely how to define all the first New Covenant and all the second New Covenant Pentecosts, even when the first fruits occurs in a monthly Sabbath, or when the Pentecost itself occurs in a monthly Sabbath, or a Jubilee, and you know how to deal with all of those cases, and then of course even when that's finished, blooming thing can end up on a weekly Sabbath and you have to bump it forward a day. In the case of the 2NC, not in the case of the 1NC, which is defined by weekly Sabbath. So when you are an absolute 100% perfect festival geek, then you can work out the last day of the Super Pentecost. And that's why I found it so difficult to do, because I never imagined things were quite this complicated. But now I have the dubious distinction of becoming a serious festival geek. So I think we've got it right now. So now Ab 2 is July 24 to 25. It's the Sabbath day. It's not this Friday, Saturday coming, it's next Friday, Saturday, in 10 days' time or so, less. And then Ab 5-6 is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, July 27 to 29. That's the third fireside. And if you, as I say, it's a bit difficult to explain it just with words. You have to look at Understanding 271-11, and that has it all laid out, hopefully in a way that makes it easy to understand. But it is that complicated. You really do need, in my opinion, to be good at abstract algebra or abstract symbolism to work it out. You don't have to be so good to understand it as long as somebody else has worked it out. But it was quite some task. Alright, so thank you very much. That's the latest prediction, 417th prediction. Thanks.